get started. As you may have figured out if you didn't already know, there's a big focus in this particular forum on employment issues for individuals on the spectrum and how libraries can help that. So we have a panel of people who have volunteered to talk to you about employment on the spectrum. And I'm going to go through and just give a brief introduction for each of them. Starting with my far right, we have Philip Zupon. Philip's a 36-year-old individual with high-functioning autism who doesn't let his label define him by any means. Currently, Phil works full-time as a library technician for the state of Michigan. In his spare time, Phil enjoys serving on his local Friends of the Library Committee. He plays the piano, and he enjoys going on bike rides and nature hikes. Next to Phil, we have Dan O'Hara. Dan lives in the south suburbs of Chicago. He's currently employed as a part-time adult services assistant at the Midlothian Public Library. Has a bachelor's in history from St. Xavier University and an MLIS degree from Dominican University. Dan enjoys spending time with family, visiting historic places, and watching the Chicago White Sox baseball games. Next to Dan is Ada Bird. Ada previously worked as a school librarian at both elementary and middle school levels. She's also a board-certified assistant behavior analyst, or BCaBA, specializing in youth with autism spectrum disorders. Ada's an adult with autism and nonverbal learning disability, as well as a sibling and mother to someone with autism. She currently teaches middle school reading in Champaign. And at this end of the table, we have Tina Dolcetti. Tina's here today from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, in Canada. She actually gets the award for having traveled the furthest distance to be here for this forum. By day, Tina manages the children's department of the Moose Jaw Public Library. And in her alternate identity at night, Tina's a Cape Crusader for inclusion as a mentor and a Girl Scout autism volunteer. So welcome to our panel this morning. And I'm going to be interviewing the panel and trying not to walk around too much and distract them or you. And what we're going to do is I'm going to be asking questions, and then we'll give each person on the panel an opportunity to answer them. So the first question for all of you is, what's been a challenge or obstacle in getting your current position or getting employed at all in a library-related job? And we'll start with Dan, and then we'll change who starts each time, if that's okay.
I always had troubles with interviews.
Oh, it looks like it is. Hello?
Test. I always had troubles with interviews.
Yeah, that's good.
I had troubles at collecting my thoughts at interviews. Am I doing okay? Okay.
Just hold it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yep, no borders.
As I was saying, I always had trouble at interviews just collecting my thoughts before answering questions. Therefore, it would take me a long time to answer questions. But before getting my current job, I provided an advocacy statement, which allowed me to disclose to the person interviewing me that I have some trouble answering questions in a timely manner. So I was able to rectify this problem by providing an advocacy statement and disclosing in an interview, which I felt was really beneficial. And it could be beneficial for others. I can't really tell you if you can decide on your own whether to disclose right at the interview or not.
My two biggest challenges have been geography, for a start. I'm place-bound, right now at least, in Champaign, Illinois, which is fabulous. It's just down the road from our lovely University of Illinois Library School. So every year I hate my colleagues when, there's 2 or 3 job openings and, there's so many of us competing for them. I like them the rest of the year. And so it's very difficult because it's a smaller geographical area with a lot of competition. And, I'm not able to move yet. My husband has a wonderful job at the university, and so forth. So that's definitely been a challenge. It took many years. Of course, I finished school when there was a recession going on in 2010 to get that first teaching and library job, which, finally I'm in the schools now. My other biggest challenge, it really hasn't been autism related. I mean, it took me a while to learn how to interview well, but according to people I know, I've got that down now. I had a previous supervisor, but providing a bad reference behind my back. I'm not the only one it happened to. Academia. Things have since been dealt with, union got involved, but that really set me back and cost me a couple of positions through HR and other things. So, it's sort of weird and random, but I think it goes to show that difficulty with employment and stuff can happen to anyone. It doesn't just have to be disability related, but I'm looking forward to getting back in the library, so if anyone's hiring.
Okay, so my biggest roadblock, I would have said, was social skills. So first of them, when you're a young university student and you're learning how to work with kids, because I'm a children's librarian, basically, how to pitch your voice, when you're talking with babies, when you're talking with kids, when you're talking with their adults, but also interviews were an obvious pitfall area for me. But not just the interviews, but it was the niceties of staff room talk. So I don't know if any of you would ever consider eating lunch with a person who likes discussing slaughterhouse technology in Temple Grandin during lunch hour, or also how about trying to bond with a person who has a severe frown on their face some of the time? Would that work for you? I'm thinking probably not, but most of those challenges can be easily addressed by just having an empathetic employer and having great conversations. But I also wanted to say that one of my biggest helps with getting through that first roadblock level was working with my local learning disability association. So they gave me a great job coach during my first year at a really great price. And having a bi-weekly job coach really meant that I was able to pass my probation period way better because of them. Anyway.
All right, well, as with everyone else, social skills was my biggest issue. There was no professional social skills training available in college. I always wish they would have had a class on how to be like Mr. Lumberg from Office Space. And so I had to learn all that on my own, stumbled my way out of my first library job because of that, and probably struggled on interviews and many other areas. Honestly, knowing when to disclose is very difficult because sometimes I can turn people off, sometimes I can open up the door. It was having the right amount of job experience because like Ada, I graduated right in the middle of the recession. And so I had all these other people who had master's degrees in library sciences coming out of college, but this was my first career. I had not had a previous career, and libraries were actually looking for people who were teachers and business people to help them expand themselves. And then the last one was knowing the right people. Honestly, the easiest route to a library job is either start volunteering when you are in high school, have your parents get on the Friends of the Library Committee, and they'll start building your network of knowing library directors and people who are high within your local libraries, or try to score a part-time job as a clerk while you are still starting college and get to know the library administration well, because if you really want to be able to get a library job when you graduate, you've got to be able to go through all the right doors at the right time. Otherwise, you're really trying to scratch around to find a lot of side doors and back doors.
I know it's going to come in a minute. And Dan, since you've got the Phil, rather, since you've got the microphone, if you'd like to start for the next question, how did you prepare for your current position?
Ooh, that's a two-part question. How did I prepare for my current position? Well, when they made me the offer to start working at the Ionia Correctional Facility, I read as much as I could on the job of a prison librarian and what it consists of. And then through a couple of people at my church, I actually had the opportunity to talk to someone who had formerly been incarcerated, and he helped to kind of familiarize me with the prison culture and what to look out for. So by the time I was ready to start, I had an idea of a little bit of what I was getting into, and then I learned from there on. The second part, however, was basically my life prepared me for this. I mean, there are things that I learned from my previous job working at the law library at Wayne State University in the middle of Detroit, serving as a part-time cashier at Rite Aid where I had to sell alcohol to people and had to tell a lot of people no, and even riding the special ed bus to school as a child, just because of the fact that they put all the people with the same developmental disabilities in the same bus. So you had people who had a lot of emotional problems, and so basically I kind of had learned some skills without knowing it of how to work with difficult people. But you always have to be diligent about looking for learning experiences wherever you may find them, because you never know when you may need to use them.
With this question, I'm just going to talk about how I built up my interview skills. I have some communication issues, and those hindered me in my previous interviews. So I attended speech therapy sessions at a local university clinic, and they helped me a lot. I benefited a lot from what I learned there. We practiced interview questions with each other. They let me practice doing a presentation in front of my class. They let me do mock interviews with a career advisor, and that's what I basically did to prepare for my current position, because I need to build up my interview skills. I had similar experience for my current position, so I was prepared for all the duties necessary for it.
Over the course of adulthood, some things I've done include that in college, both in graduate school and undergraduate school. I worked with organizational coaches. I worked on social skills very deliberately and intensively over a long period of time, practicing making eye contact, and then again practicing making eye contact. Because I go on, I think I'm good at eye contact. I'd be like, no, you're not, dear. So I practiced that again. Again, speech therapy, even after I graduated and was a mom and everything, because I find the need to go back and retool some of those skills every once in a while. So you got to keep up, working on it. I always say to people, the more challenges you have, the harder you get to work. The other thing that I've done is while I was waiting for that first professional opportunity, I volunteered. I, did a lot in the community and so forth. For my current position, I actually didn't get much time to prepare. I started teaching my class a couple days after the semester started. I got a call one day from the school where they knew me because I did a long-term sub there the year before, and everyone was really in favor. They really liked me. I did well. I worked as part of a team player. And they said, guess what? We have an opening. We want you to come sub and probably take over the class. I said, great. Will there be lesson plans? We're checking into that. Awesome. And so I just sort of figured it out as I was doing. It was my first time in the classroom, and you put in the work and you say, hi, help me, to the teachers down the hall. And, you research and you do what you can, and eventually you get the hang of it. Fake it till you make it. Of course, kids, I know exactly what I'm doing. Yes, I have your rubric. It'll all be fine. And it is, in the long run. And the other thing that helped me was that networking, that social piece. I was a known entity in that school. Other schools too. There was an opening recently at one school in my area, and another teacher I'd worked with subbing. I spent about a year subbing. Said, "There's a job opening. You're my favorite candidate. Have you heard of interview techniques?" I'm like, "You mean don't be an asshole isn't the official interview technique?" No, apparently there's actual interview techniques like the STAR method and stuff. So, I'm fortunate to have colleagues who write me letters of recommendation. They'll practice questions with me. We went over these, various techniques and, so forth. So I also feel that's been, a big advantage and also a confidence booster to have people saying, "I want you, to come work here with us."
Okay, so I'm really glad that they asked about how you prepare for your current position, because I did two things. At least what I did fell into two different subject categories. I would qualify them as being number one is personal research, and then number two is life experience that I've accumulated. So under the first one, because I'm a supervisor as part of my current role, I read a lot of books on supervision, and I have a really great aunt who's a school principal, so I got to ask her all those questions on how do I deal with this, how do I deal with that, if that arises. Also, I had a really bad work experience prior to that, so I took a lot from that position, what I would want in a current work environment, what I wouldn't want in a current work environment. I mean, I know a lot of people talk about, the difficulties that they have, but if you have a really bad work environment and you've learned from it, that's really important. Life experience though. I really wanted to work with kids even when I was really not great with people. So I volunteered, I babysat, I was a Sunday school instructor for 2 years. I did overnight camp, and somehow after all those years of that, I was still really not that great at working with young kids. So I signed up for this summer camp where I was thinking that I was going to be working with preteens, and then when I got there the first day on the job, I found out I was working with preschoolers. And I walked into the room and I smiled and I said, "Hi guys," and they all started crying. So I closed the room door quietly, there were about 5 or 6 of them, and I went to my supervisor's office and I opened the door and I said, "Kim, they're crying." Why? And she said, "Well, Tina, their parents are away for the first time. Go and comfort them." So I went back, told the kids that, their parents will be back in about 2.5 hours, and they started crying even more, so I went back. And she was like, "Tina, that's 5 TV shows away. Go out into the garden, have fun." I was like, "But that's not on the schedule." And she was just like, "Tina, just make sure that they do that, and if they have the bathroom dance, make sure that they're gonna go back into the bathroom. And oh yes, I think I probably should explain this to you, but when they put their hands on their knees and they do a little wiggle like this, they have to go to the bathroom." So, and after 6 weeks of that, I had a whole lot more self-confidence because someone had actually taken the chance on me and explained in very, very great detail, how to work with kids. I became a lot more outgoing as a result. And I am where I am because Kim was very, very, very detailed with me.
Tina, do you want to start the next question? Okay. The next question on the list is, what would you like employers to know about having employees with autism?
Okay, so I would like employers to know quite a lot of things about people with autism. So number one, if I had any chance, I would let them know that employees with autism can and should be given a chance, even though they appear different, because like Rocky Balboa, they might be like a tenacious underdog that's really willing to work hard. Number two, don't be afraid when your employee mentions accommodations, because often it can be something as simple as I keep paper clips and pencils at my desk. Those are my accommodations for staying on task. I keep a cell phone at my desk so I can, use Google Calendars and create my own accommodations. Very, very, very not expensive. Also, body language is less than meaningful, as John Carley was mentioning. You know, be clear with your instructions. I would also like to mention that autism doesn't always mean meltdowns. So if you give that person the chance to be able to keep tabs on themselves and be a little bit more flexible with them, you know, you'll have a really productive employee. The last two things I'd like to make sure that people know are that gaze avoidance doesn't mean that the person's not listening to you. It means that they are listening to you in great detail and they are not getting any visual distractions. And that if you give visual, tactile, and auditory supports to all of your employees, you'll be helping out a bunch of different people, including people who are learning English for the first time, people who have disabilities, and people of all learning types. As a manager who's come out to staff and disclosed myself to about half my staff, I also find out that people are willing to come out with all various different types of mental health issues, including like ADHD or bipolar disorder or anxiety or stress. And I find that that actually even creates some really great conversations around mental health in the workplace and having good balance. So, there you go.
Well, to expand on what Tina said, you know, just because we have social problems does not mean that we're arrogant or incapable. If there's one thing that I wish for more than anything, it's that people would regularly take the time to explain to me what I'm doing wrong or how I'm coming across. I mean, if people would just take the time, it may take, you know, a couple coming at it from different angles, but, you know, I'll honestly have an idea of how to manage an out-of-control prisoner based on life experience, even something that maybe worked with me when I was having a meltdown and out of control. And in my head, it seems perfectly fine. And then I try it, it blows up in my face, and first question I want to ask is why? Well, because obviously not everybody seems to respond to this is how others are perceiving you. Now you need to change your behavior because if you don't, they're going to keep perceiving you in this way. And, well, some people just honestly do not care how others are perceiving them. They want to keep doing their old habits. The other thing is that, you know, we have, oftentimes, you know, we not only have all the capabilities that neurotypical people have, we have hidden talents or gifts, sometimes by our own unique experiences that through our hardships in life. And if people are willing to just work with us, explain things to us when we do wrong, you know, our hidden talents can sometimes overcompensate for our weaknesses, you know. We just, sometimes, I hate to sound babyish, but we sometimes just need a little extra understanding.
I would like employers to know that everyone on the spectrum is different. As I mentioned before, I have some communication issues. Some people on the spectrum don't, or, you know, can be loud. And some people have on the spectrum have different personalities. There's a lot of people who are introverts. I would consider myself in the middle. But there's some people on the spectrum that can be introverts, and that doesn't mean that others are not trying to be introverts. We just have different personalities at a time. And I just also like employers to know that sometimes we can't read body language. Sometimes, so I don't know if someone may be angry. I don't know. I look angry sometimes. I always, in my childhood, my mom always said to me, in my childhood, why you look angry? And I was not angry, so I don't know when I'm angry sometimes. So I just like employees to know that I may not know what emotions I'm showing at the time.
My biggest piece of advice would, number one, be not to assume things. For example, that people with autism are introverted. I realize I'm in the minority. I'm a huge extrovert. Yes, I want to deal with the public and all its messiness. I thrive on that social interaction. Not to assume that there's a problem with a patron or a student that's because of autism or a disability. I can guarantee you, if there's a student that I'm having trouble with, there's another teacher without any disability or issue having trouble with that student too. Also, that people with autism, we're not all the same. One thing that drives me crazy is I'll hear people promoting the benefits of hiring people with autism. They love to do repetitive tasks. No, we don't all love to do repetitive tasks. I like to work independently with higher level skills. So, that stuff gets lumped together, or we can't always make eye contact, or, some of these things. Yeah, some people are going to struggle with that, but don't assume going in that's going to be an issue because of something. The other thing I'd like to know is if you want us to know something, tell us. Preferably in writing. I kind of like lists or bullet points. And it's easy, it's not a huge mystery. You don't have to, tiptoe on glass, just say it, plainly, there's no walking on eggshells required. If you go and say, you know what, I didn't like the way you do something, did it this way instead, I would say, great, thanks for the feedback. So I think sometimes people worry about that, like, oh my gosh, they're gonna have a meltdown if I tell them something. No.
Okay, Ada, do you mind starting the next one? Okay, do you think a library position is beneficial for a person with autism?
I think a library position can be very beneficial for someone with autism. Not just for that person, but also for the library. People with autism rock. And, having autism and, struggles can help us relate to people in the public. Like my Choice Exceptional students, man, I get those kids, so they tend to love me because they know I get it. I'm going to give them some good strategies, for how to stay focused or deal with something. And, I think that's something that people often overlook, that having come from, various backgrounds, it's given us this wonderful toolbox that we can work with. Plus, I think that libraries are just a wonderful societal force. And why wouldn't people want to work in them? But I might be a little biased.
I actually can think that library positions will be really great for people with autism. So, autism is different in everyone who has it, but I think that people can actually bring quite a lot to the table with when it comes to being a person with autism and working within a library, because some of us can be detail-oriented and accurate, but a lot of us are actually quite passionate about what we do and what we know. Like, I have met so many subject matter experts who are basically all my kids with autism, who actually will teach me quite a lot more than about their subject matter of interest, like Rubbermaid manufacturing processes, or My Little Pony, or Monster High, or things like that, that basically they can be really interested in. I've also, like, some women with autism actually are really, really great fantasy readers, so they'd probably make good readers advisory specialists. I can probably think that people with autism who are in cataloging or in collections maintenance, who have to, like, make sure that all the series are all kept or all ordered correctly, like, that would be a really great position.
My answer to this question is yes, as long as you have the willingness to stretch yourself and the desire to learn the social skills necessary to work with people. Over the years, as I've gotten involved with the autism communities, trying to help parents of children with autism, help their children, I've noticed that there's been this big debate over, how much should we encourage people with autism to be social when they're naturally not? And I would argue, and I'm finding that it's very important that you at least teach them civil skills, and at least on a very rudimentary level, how to relate to other people. Because as they get into the work world, especially the professional work world, they're going to have to be aware of others around them and the need to stretch themselves so that they're not any more of, they don't cause any more inconvenience to people than they have to. And that's definitely true in the library profession. I mean, you always have to be aware of your patrons, how you're coming across to them, your supervisors, anybody who you serve. But part of the reason I chose the library profession is because I knew they would stretch me. I knew they would reinvent me. I mean, I pleaded for them to understand me and give me a chance. But I really wanted to finally, for once in my life, have a career that would force me to understand the world of people around me when for so long I didn't. And for me, the library's been excellent.
A library position allows me, as a person on the spectrum and with communication issues, to work on my communication issues every day. I learn how to talk to different groups of people as we have a combined desk at my library where you have adult services and youth services. I learned how to talk to younger kids. And we also learn more social skills. We always try to say hello to the patrons who approach us. So I think it's been very beneficial. I benefited a lot since I've been at my current position, just with my communication skills with other groups I didn't have previous experience communicating with.
Okay, this next question I think really follows naturally because you've been speaking a lot about social skills and communication. And Dan, I'll ask you to start. How do you approach communication, social skills, and tasks at your job site?
At my current position, I let my supervisor know that sometimes I like to communicate by email or texts. It could be easier sometimes if I just need to send a quick message about something. It would be easier for me just to write it out than talking on the phone, or if I just forget something, I could just let them know by writing.
One of the ways I approach communication is, I believe you have to be proactive, even a little bit aggressive as a school librarian, because you are the library department, and you've really got to put yourself out there and say, hey, when can I come collaborate? Hey, when do you want me to present that lesson? Hey, what can I do for you? I didn't hear back from you. When do you want to schedule that time? Guess what? I have something else I can do for you. When's a good time for you? And you keep doing that until you wear them down, and then they realize, okay, that person's really helpful, and then they start approaching you. In general, well, number one, at least if you're a woman, smile like a Canadian. It might feel unnatural, and the rules are a little different for men, but especially as a female working with kids, and people that also work with kids, smile all the time. You gotta put yourself out there. Be proactive and keep communicating. Also have clarity of purpose. If you're communicating, why? Even if it's an in-person conversation or email or whatever, state clearly, hi, I'm emailing to set up a time for us to review our budget. Hi, I just wanted to touch base with you on, what the management plan, parameters were for this device. Hi, I'm communicating so, we can figure out a way to go over that checkout schedule. Thanks. That sort of thing. Otherwise, I think it can be unclear, and that's troubling for people to respond to. So I do think we have that responsibility to sort of set that tone. Ask for what you want. And if you're not clear, someone's communicating with you, ask those follow-up questions. Say, I'm not quite sure, what the goal is here. Can you help clarify that for me? I hear you saying this and also this, and that sort of thing. So I think you have to have a lot of clarity and intentionality.
I actually agree quite a lot with Ada about the importance of smiling and the importance of clarity and communication. So often what I'll do with my staff is I'll write down the tasks that I'd like them to do clearly and tactfully, I'll also, be proactive about letting people know in a direct way that I really do appreciate them. And I understand that I will not understand body language, so I encourage people to push back if they really don't like my ideas. Or I'll give them ideas and give them plenty of opportunity to have feedback, and I've trained my staff that they can actually speak their minds with me and be very clear and very overt in how they feel about things. I also, in my first year on the job, I regularly consulted my colleague, whose name was Laura at the time, about workplace social skills such as who likes who doesn't like who doesn't interact well together, and let's learn the hidden curriculum, as Michael John Carley would say behind the words, interesting, and let's research that. Because there was this person who used to like to say, interesting, let's research that one, and she meant to say, I really don't like that idea, and I hope that I'll rewrote you with that, but no. So I got some clarification on that, so I didn't really waste my time with research that was extraneous. But I also, as I mentioned, I do the Google Calendar thing. I create schedules that are a little bit flexible for myself, so I'll say, 1 hour for ordering. I won't, it allows me a little bit more flexibility to be able to get my job tasks done. And I have a lot of humor with dealing with other people because I know I'm gonna get the social communications wrong, so might as well laugh about it. I don't know if anyone is up for a funny story. Okay, so this is one of the many sort of daily interactions I might have with my staff. We were at the mall for a training early in the morning. Naturally, everyone needed to drink a lot of coffee to stay awake for the first aid training. And at the bathroom, we all were proceeding in line for the stalls. And the first and second stall door opened, and we were at the front of the line. So I told my boss, okay, number 1 and number 2, let's go. In a really nice, loud voice. Let me tell you, I did not live that one down for quite a while. But anyways, yeah, so those are my thoughts on communication and on approaching your job tasks.
I always ask lots of questions. I'm always asking my supervisors, how do you want me to say what you want me to say to someone so it comes across right? How do you want me to write out my response to a prisoner's grievance? Do you want me to include the little part in there about how he tried to falsely accuse me of sexually harassing him because I wouldn't let him have supplies from the arts cabinet, which could be used as weapons? And then I also learn from my mistakes. I'll go back to this case where I tried using the, why are you behaving this way? This is how others are perceiving you. I had a group of 6 inmates who would come in, and they would always start to talk with each other. There were 2 guys who served as kind of like the ringleaders. If they were there, you knew they'd start talking and everybody else would follow. Well, there's no talking allowed in the law library unless you need to talk to the clerk or the legal writer to get material, because you could easily have a gang meeting in that library. So I had sent these guys out, kicked them out many times, written misconduct, sent them back to their units. Nothing was working. So the day before, an officer had mentioned to me that, these 6 guys were under suspicion for being part of or trying to form a gang. So I'm thinking, well, they don't want to lose their privilege of being able to come to the library. So maybe I'll just, let them know that the officers are thinking that they're forming a gang. So the next day I said, why are you guys always talking to each other? Don't you understand that the officers suspect you of gang activity? And, well, it didn't work. They talked, I kicked them out, and when I went to the unit to pick up the sign-up sheets, or kites as we call them, I was confronted by a very angry officer saying, did you just tell those prisoners they were suspected of gang activity? And I'm like, whoa, what did I do wrong? Yes. And he said, now we have to worry about whether or not one of these guys are going to assault us because you told them and they're going to take it out on us. So after a little bit of a meeting with that officer, another officer, and the deputy warden, I quickly figured out that you never tell people in a prison that they're suspected of gang activity because number one, some of these people never want to change their behavior, and number two, they'll always take it out on the officers. So it's like I'm always asking, always watching, and always learning. And I apologize to everybody, promise each one of them I'd never do it again.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions that may not affect everybody, so I'll ask and I'll leave it up to you all who answers and what. The first question is, if you did, how did you inform your employer about your autism?
As I mentioned before, I disclosed before my interview that I was on the spectrum and I have some communication issues sometimes, so sometimes it may take me a while to answer questions in a timely manner. And this was the first time I provided a self-advocacy statement, and it worked. I got the job, so.
After I had the job and it had started, a couple days in, if I thought it'd be beneficial, I like to do it with an emphasis on how easy those little things are and just how they're gonna help me be such a good team player, you know, and really help serve my community. And you do it in writing, because first of all, you want to frame it in such a way that they say, oh my gosh, giving you things in writing, you know, they're going to look like a jerk if they say no. And, you know, second of all, you really want to emphasize that it's just to help you do a good job and work with them better, you know, and do more of what you're there to do.
Okay, so when I got my job, I actually didn't have a diagnosis. I was going through some personal difficulties, what with my parent having cancer and my mom having cancer. So I learned that I had with my mom having cancer and me maybe having cancer, I learned that I had a lot of internal resources. So I wanted to make sure that I wanted that work environment to be the right place. So I started at the reference stage. I only put people that would actually talk honestly about me rather than getting a false positive. So if they suspected that there were difficulties, I wanted my future employer to know that. But on day 2 of the job, I went up to her and I told her, look, I might have a disability, I'm getting it assessed, and you know, if you have any concerns, please let me know. And when I got my diagnosis based on information I was given at the time, I decided to wait until after my probation period. Not sure that I would do that again, but I had a letter that I created basically for my employers telling them why autism is a really great thing, how it helps me bond with other community members and with other staff. And I gave that letter to them in writing, as well as having a variety of different small one-on-one conversations so that people could ask me questions and feel like they could actually talk about it. And that kept everything positive.
I also disclosed right after I was hired. I wanted to make sure I had the job first, because I had tried the closing before interviews. I didn't feel it worked, but I had a few reference letters from former employers, as well as one that acknowledged that I had a disability and I was capable of doing whatever work I was assigned. And then I basically just explained to them my needs. I needed to carry a notebook with me, and at first I would need to write lots of notes. I still do. And so I could review them and know what to say, know what to do, especially with multitasking tasks. And that, you know, if any communication issues ever arose, to please let me know as soon as possible, and that I would work to solve them and work to change them, as I knew that I was unfamiliar to a prison environment and that I would have to learn to readapt myself. And me telling them the last part worked well, because they're actually quite familiar in prison with hiring employees from professional backgrounds who have no knowledge of what they're getting into until they get behind the main butterfly gate.
Okay, Dan, my hearing sometimes plays tricks, but I think in your answer to this question you said something about an advocacy statement. Could you talk about that? Say if you think it was beneficial to use an advocacy statement. Yeah, was it beneficial for you to provide an advocacy statement for your interview?
Yeah, at this interview it did. I was able just to say it right before the interview, and my now supervisor didn't have a problem with it, and I was able to get through the interview, answering the questions in a timely manner.
And could you really describe for people who've never heard the term before, what is an advocacy statement?
In my advocacy statement, I just basically disclose that I'm on the autistic spectrum. I have some communication issues. When answering questions, it may take me a minute or so to answer the questions.
Okay. And I want to give each of you a chance before we go further, if you have just some general statements or anything that you'd each like to make. You may not. I usually don't have anything prepared myself. But
I would just like to thank Targeting Autism for letting people on the spectrum who are employed in libraries share their stories. There's not a lot of autistic people who are allowed to share their stories with others. We get other people, we get parents' stories of their children. We don't get stories from people on the spectrum, especially adults.
I guess one bit of advice from me would be to be confident. I think that can be difficult, especially interviews, scary, very scary, and looking for jobs, other things like that. But go in, sell yourself, be confident. I really do think that makes a difference. I don't think there's any reason not to be.
okay, we've got some time for questions, so I'll run around with the mic. If anyone has questions for the panel, they'll choose who answers. Let me start here and work my way back.
Hi, I think this is probably just a quick question. A couple of you talked about an advocacy statement, and a couple of others of you talked about requesting accommodations in writing. And I'm just wondering if you did this on your own or if you worked with people. Did other people look at those before you submitted?
As I mentioned before, I went to speech therapy sessions, and we worked on the statement that I would give at an interview. We worked a lot on just getting it to the right version that could be used.
No, I do it all on my own. I also have a background where I am a certified special ed teacher and so forth. So, I've been going to IEPs for my brother since I was 14. So I have a bit more nuanced background than other people might.
I had a job coach who went over it with me. I also consulted with family, but yes, my job coach was really important, but also nowadays I mainly go it on my own too.
Well, I didn't have to ever prepare a self-advocacy statement. I was always working with everyone from just the Career Center at my local university to even some of my older former speech pathologists and faculty within the School of Library and Information Science at Wayne State University on how to advocate for myself if I ever had to. You've always got to utilize your networks and build them if you don't have one. Networks are important.
I think most people have kind of similar reasons why they want to be employed. And I want to know two things. One is, what is your primary reason for wanting to be employed? Some of that might be evident, but I want to hear it. And then second, what is the one thing in your jobs that really brings you joy? Makes you look forward to going to work every day?
Okay, so I like working because it gives me independence and because, you know, I can save up for my future and it gives me a sense of purpose. And what I really like about my current job, you know, it's really hard for me to pick one thing. But like, okay, I'll pick two things. Number one, I have some of the world's greatest programmers working with me. So some of the greatest children's instructors who are really flexible and wonderful people working with me. The other thing is that like I get to help other people doing what they need to do, and that's a really great feeling to have at the end of the day.
Well, for me, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, if I wasn't employed, I'd have to be a stay-at-home mom, and the cleaning aspect alone would make me fear for my husband's, you know, safety. No way am I doing all the cleaning. So, just no, that's never happening. I made that very clear. The other reason is libraries, and you know, working with the youth in public. That is my life's passion. You know, it's been a dream of mine to be a middle school librarian for a decade now, and I'm going to relentlessly pursue that forever. I strongly believe in what I do. I, every day, get to have an impact on, you know, about 100-some kids. I love that. I'm good at that. You know, and there's the days I'm like, oh my gosh, am I a good teacher? I'm struggling, because that's what it's like. But then there's that day with that kid who failed my class last quarter and was getting all these behavioral referrals, realizes, hey, I'm getting an A. I don't misbehave anymore. I'm like, yes, I told you, we worked on this, you got it. You know, seeing that light in their eyes when they get something, realizing you've made a difference. Man, that's a good drug. You know, and that alone, that really propels me, you know, forward. I strongly believe, you know, in my calling and, you know, what I can do.
I've always been great at developing research skills and learning how to use technology, and when finding out you can use these skills as a librarian, I just wanted to become one.
Well, for me, it's many things, really. First and foremost, you know, like every one of you, you know, I want to be appreciated. We all want to. We all want to feel like we have value in society. And there's just something about having a full-time job and, you know, working for your own living that just gives you a sense of fulfillment that nothing else will. And, you know, like this particular job is my first particular full-time job, and it's also the first job where I've ever been given any kind of leadership capabilities, whether it's supervising prisoners, ordering supplies, making decisions as to whether or not a prisoner's claim that they need free copies because of a court date is valid or not. And, you know, for years I worked at, you know, dead-end part-time jobs where I was compartmentalized, or I felt compartmentalized. Some of that was good. It taught me patience. But after a while, you know, when I went to socialize with other people my age who were successful full-time professionals, I felt very left out. And after a while, it just wore down on me. And so there's just a certain sense of fulfillment and that comes from being employed and being able to live independently, make your own decisions in life. I also find joy in helping people. I mean, I had to read a lot about prisoners and, you know, what are the circumstances in life that cause people to commit crimes where they wind up in prison for long periods of time, and some never admit that they totally did wrong. But when you read those stories, it's like it gives you a whole different perspective on people, and some of these people are just hurting people who never got help soon enough. And so when you're helping them to access legal material, or you're allowing them to go into a library and read books, even if they're donated by organizations because nobody else wants them, you're opening their whole world to a mind of learning. And you know, I can remember when I was a child and I went to the library because I wanted to see what I could do with my life when everybody else basically said that I belonged in a group home or an institution. And within those pages of books and those early computers were ideas and knowledge and possibilities that beyond my parents and my speech pathologists and those few who believed in me, I couldn't find anywhere else. So to me, the library is it's the fountain of all knowledge for humanity. And I just can't say enough about, what we do for the world and what we can continue to do. Always be searching to expand yourselves.
This question is for the fellow who worked in prisons, but anyone else with input can jump into. How much of what you've learned and how you've learned to deal with people can be applied to ED students?
Can you define ED?
Emotionally disturbed, come from broken homes, difficult backgrounds, low-income families.
Actually, a lot, because many of these people are disturbed, come from emotionally abusive backgrounds and broken families. Well, for one thing, they teach you patience. They teach you to find out why the person has a problem and why they're behaving the way they do. And I think you can learn a lot about working with people with emotional problems from working in a prison. My only wish is that we could somehow do more for these people and somehow psychologically get them to a point where they're willing to take responsibility for their life just enough where they could actually, overcome their problems and be released into society. I mean, so much of what they're dealing with is this mental block where it's like, they honestly think, pity poor me, I had no choice but to do what I did to get where I am, and the world screwed me over, so the world owes me. And honestly, with these people, it's always a matter of just wanting to at least take the time to try, even if you fail, to get them to realize, well, no, you are not stuck where you are, and no, you can change the way things are, and you can make something out of your life in spite of your past mistakes. So my answer for your question is, I think you can learn a lot about helping people with any kind of problems from working in a prison, because we're all human, we all struggle with human nature.
I do work with students with, ED, BD, and so forth. I have clear and explicit training in that. The kid that wants to assault me, we're good now. We worked it out. Part of it is learning the different strategies. It's also an attitude. It's my classroom or my library. They are not going to set the rules or the agenda. And they might not like that, but then they'll really respect that. And also working very clearly and explicitly. I will model the social skills I want to see from my students. How to talk to your teacher, how to go through this. I'm happy, I have kids that'll come in after school, before school, we'll work together on stuff. Is the parent phone calls home and so forth. And, it's working with them, and I know you believe in them and they can do it. And, I think, it's challenging, there's the days when there's the kids climbing on furniture, and so forth. You're like, really? But when you see them, process and grow and change, it's really worth it. I think, everyone working with the public deals with that to a certain extent. And I think once you get that, bag of tricks, and that starts to grow and expand over time, it becomes easier and more second nature.
Hi, these two questions come from my impression that you are all very resilient and strategic, because you all seem like you've worked really hard at every job or every step you've taken to work at a library. So I'm very impressed. And I was wondering, just because with all this wave of autism and increased awareness of autism and autism getting the word thrown here, thrown there, everyone's hearing it more often. I would like to know if you would like to share, when in your job have you felt very empowered by being on the spectrum, and maybe one instance where it's difficult and you had to take step by step and really like overcome something? Because I know there are self-advocates in the group and it's not always easy. So getting to your dream job, they're two very different questions, I guess.
I'm going to be the person that says the wrong thing. I don't think autism is a gift. I would be happy to say, no, learning disabilities, autism, go away. I don't need you, life is hard enough. Now, there's plenty of people who are going to disagree with me and so forth. That's fine. But I think it's okay to have a dissenting opinion. I don't necessarily know that I feel empowered by awareness. I think it helps. I'm very open. You know, I have secrets. My husband's like, I know, it's annoying. But, you know, my students, I'm like, you know, yeah, I have autism. They'll ask me about that, what that means, because they read about it in the book. And I think that's good. I think in part where we are now because of people like me and the people that came the generation before that were like that, those people that didn't have secrets. And I still think we're in a very difficult time. We're not where we need to be. We're still having a debate on vaccines and all this other crap. So I don't know. I think it's a long, difficult road ahead, and you have to be resilient. If you lie down, you're done. You've got to be able to get back up again.
I agree actually with Ada on quite a number of things. I used to be at the point of everything. I don't know, you must have some sort of Vulcan mind meld with me. Yes, anyways, I used to be like totally go autism at the beginning, but like I do feel that it is a legitimate disability. And it does cause some definite areas of difficulty. For me, where it creates areas of difficulty from them, I just really try to learn hard and work hard on it and learn for the next time. It's important to be resilient and to know that you can try again and again and again and again as many times as it needs to happen before you actually learn and are able to go on to the next thing. But I volunteer with this young girl with autism, and I just try to tell her, yes, it is really difficult, but you have to find what works for you. And you have to do the things that work for you. And they might not be what works for everyone else, but they work for you.
Well, I'll harken back to the fact that, you know, some of our greatest learning experiences are through, you know, our past experiences, even pain. Some of the moments that I've felt the most empowered as an individual with autism on my job is when I can use my past experiences to help others. We were planning on reorganizing the library, combining it into one room, and they wanted to move us next door to the smaller room that had originally been our library. So I talking to the deputy warden, and I said, you know, I understand why you would want to move us to the smaller room, but I think as you notice, sometimes, if you notice from, you know, here, sometimes having a lot of space can be actually a great self-defense, and having a lot of objects. And then I talked to him about how growing up, you know, I rode on the special ed bus to school. And because, you know, they were just starting to integrate people with disabilities into the mainstream classroom, and we had a lot of ED students, the bus drivers kind of had to learn as they went. And so what they finally learned to do is put the best behaved kids up in the front of the bus, or our extended Ford van, and put the worst behaved kids in the back of the bus, sometimes spacing them apart, depending if one of the kids would try to attack the other. So that if they had a meltdown or an incident, they could pull over the bus and they had more time to get to the back of the bus to basically get the child who was acting out under control. And I said, if I have a prisoner who gets mad and suddenly decides to charge me, it's better that if I have a larger room so I can run across it and hide behind several tables and make it harder for them to get to me and more time to yell into my walkie-talkie or my radio for help. And I was actually able to sell him on my idea, and they're combining the libraries into our current room. So you'd be amazed at what your painful experiences can teach you. And believe me, you're looking back on those years riding on the special ed bus, there was a lot of pain up until this point.
Okay, because lunch is here, we're going to take one more question and then we'll wrap up. The panel's here throughout the forum, so I'm sure if you want to go up and meet any of them during the next 2 days, you'll have the opportunity to do that.
Hello. So I have a little bit of experience. I worked with some kids with autism in the school system, middle school age, and so I'm used to seeing like parents and different professionals advocating more for the students, and the students not necessarily advocating for themselves as much. And I'm just curious, did you have any trouble establishing sort of boundaries with your family in order to advocate for yourselves? Like what did you have to say to your family? Did you have any trouble with like separating yourselves personally and saying, okay, it's time for me to advocate for myself? Or what was that moment for you, or that discussion you had to have, or did you have to have a discussion like that? Because I know just, on any level.
In my experiences, actually another family member letting me know that I need to be more a self-advocate, and letting me know I had to work on my speech so I can get through job interviews. So I really didn't have any boundary issues with family members. They were helping me.
I actually had the opposite problem. I have an older brother with multiple severe disabilities. They wouldn't let him be fully included into our public schools because he needed one on aid, and they didn't want to do it until 7th grade. Here's the lawyers and meetings and so forth. So I was denied special education services by my mom, who felt they were doing it to target me. They weren't. Anyway, growing up, and the emphasis was always on, don't do anything that's going to make your brother look bad. Don't draw attention to yourself. Don't do this, don't do that. And pretty much told, you got something, deal with it. So I really had to learn to say, nope, not the way I'm going to do it. I've always been difficult in some ways, my mom would tell you, because I'm very stubborn. I'm going to let my